gate of the camp, SS officers were waiting for us. They counted us. Then we were directed to the assembly place. Orders were given us throughout loudspeakers. Form fives, form groups of 100, 5 spaces forward. I held onto my father's hand, the old one. Familiar fear not to lose him. Right next to us, the high chimney of the crematory. Oven rose up. It no longer made any impression on us. It scarcely attracted our attention. An established inmate of Buchenwald told us that we should have showered and that we would go into the blocks. The idea of having a hot bath fascinated me. My father was silent. He was breathing heavily beside me. Father, I said, only another moment more. Soon we can lie down in bed. You can rest. He did not answer. I was so exhausted myself that his silence left me indifferent. My only wish was to take a bath as quickly as possible and lie down in bed. But it was not easy to reach the showers. Hundreds of prisoners were crowding there. The guards were unable to keep any order. They struck out right and left with no apparent result. Others, without the strength to push or even stand, had sat down in the snow. My father wanted to do the same. He groaned, I can't go on. This is the end. I'm going to die here. He dragged me toward a hillstalk of snow from which emerged human shapes and ragged pieces of blanket. Leave me, he said to me. I can't go on. Have mercy on me. I'll have to wait here until we get into the baths. You can go and come and find me. I could have wept with rage, having living through so much, suffered so much. How could I leave my father now to die? Now when we could have a good hot bath and lie down. Father, I screamed, Father, get up from there. Immediately, you're killing yourself. I seized him by the arm. He continued to groan. Don't shout, son. Take pity on your old father. Leave me to rest here just for a bit. So tired at the end of my strength, he had to become like a child, weak, timid, vulnerable. Father, I said, you can't stay here. I showed him the corpses all around him. They too wanted to rest here. I can see them, son. I can see them all right. Let them sleep. It's so long since they closed their eyes. They're exhausted. Exhausted, his voice was tender. I yelled against the wind. They'll never wake up again. Never. Don't you understand? For a long time, this argument went on. I felt that I was not arguing with him, but with death itself. With the death that he had already chosen. The sirens began to wail and alert. The lights went out throughout the camp. The guards drove us toward the blocks. In a flash, there was no one left to the assembly place. There were only too glad not to have stayed outside longer in the icy wind. We let ourselves sink into the planks. The beds were in several tiers. The cauldrons of soup attracted no one. I believe that was all that mattered. It was a dynamite when I woke, and then I remembered that I had a father. Since the alert, I had followed the crowd without troubling without him. I had known that he was at the end, on the brink of death, and yet I had abandoned him. I went to look for him, but at the same moment, this thought came to my mind. Don't let them find you. Don't let them find him. I only could get of his dead weight so that I could use all my strength to struggle for my own survival. The only worry about myself. Immediately I felt ashamed for myself, ashamed forever. I walked for hours without finding him. Then I came to the block where they were giving out black coffee. The men were lining up and fighting. A plaintive, beseeching voice caught me in spine. Eliezer, my son, bring me a drop of coffee. I ran to him. Father, I've been looking for you for so long. Where are you? Did you sleep? How do you feel? He was burning with fever like a wild beast. I cleared a way for myself to the coffee cauldron, and I managed to carry back a cup full. I had sipped. The rest was for him. I can't forget the light of the thankfulness in his eyes while he gulped it down. An animal gratitude. With those few gulps of hot water, I probably brought him more satisfaction than I had done during my entire childhood. He was lying on a plank, livid, his lips paled and dried up, shaken by the tremors. I could not stand by him for long. Orders had been given to us to clear the place for cleaning. Only the sick could stay. We stayed outside for 5 hours. Soup was given out. As soon as we were allowed to go back to the blocks, I ran to my father. How have you ate anything? No, why not? They didn't give us anything. They said that if we were here ill, we should die soon anyway, and it would be pity to waste food. I can't go any more. I gave him what I had left of soup, but it was with a heavy heart. I felt that I was giving it up to him against my will, no better than Rabbi Elias' son. Had I withstood the test, he grew weaker day by day, his glaze veiled, his face the color of dead leaves. On the third day after our arrival at Binchuwald, everyone had to go to the showers, even the sick who had to go through very last. On the day back from the baths, we had to wait outside for a long time. They had to finish cleaning the blocks. Seeing my father in a distance, I ran to meet him. He went by me like a ghost, past me without stopping, without looking at me. I called him. He did not call back. I ran after him. Father, where are you running to? He looked at me for a moment with his gaze with distance. Visionary. It was the face of someone else. At a moment only had he run again. Struck down with dysentery, my father lay in his bunk, 5 other individuals with him. I sat by his side, watching him, not daring to believe that he would escape death again. Nevertheless, I did all that I could to give him hope. Suddenly he raised himself on his bunk and put his feverish lips to my ear. Eliezer, I must tell you where to find the gold and the money I buried. In the cellar, you know? He began to talk faster and faster, as though he were afraid he would not have time to tell me. I tried to explain to him that this was not the end, that we would go back to the house together, and that he wouldn't have to listen to me. He could no longer listen. He was exhausted. A tackle of saliva mingled with blood was running between his lips. He closed his eyes. His breath was coming in a gasp. For a ration of bread, I managed to change beds with a prisoner in my father's bunk. In the afternoon, the doctor came, and I went and told him my father was very ill. Bring him here. I explained to him that he could not stand up, but the doctor refused to listen to anything. Somehow, I brought my father to him. He stared at him. Then he questioned him in a clipped voice. What do you want? My father ill, I answered. Dentistry. Dysentery? That's not my business. I'm a surgeon. Go on. Make room for others. Protest did not good. I can't go on, son. Take me back to my bunk. I looked back at him and helped to him die. I took him back and helped him to die. Down. Lie down. He was shivering. Try to sleep for a bit, father. Try to go to sleep. His breathing was labored, thick. He kept his eyes shut. Yet I was convinced that he saw everything. Then that now he could see the truth in all the things. Another doctor came to the block, but my father could not get up. He knew that he was useless. Besides this, the doctor had only come to finish off the sick. I could hear him shouting at them that they were very lazy and just wanted to stay in bed. I felt like leaping his throat, strangling him, but I no longer had the courage or the strength. I was retrieved to my father's deathbed. My hands hurt. I clenched them so hard on the strangle the doctor and then and others to burn the whole world. My father, murderers, but the cry stayed in my throat. When I came back from the bread distribution, I found my father weeping like a child. Son, why are they hitting me? Who? I thought he was delirious. Him, the Frenchman, and the Pole, they were hitting me. Another wound to the heart, another hate, another reason for living lost. Eliezer, Eliezer, tell them not to hit me. I haven't done anything. Why do they keep hitting me? I began to abused his neighbors. They laughed at me. I promised them bread, soup. They laughed. Then they got angry. They could not stand my father any longer. They said because he was now unable to drag himself out to relieve himself. The following day, he complained that they had taken all his rations of bread. While you were asleep, no, I wasn't asleep. They jumped on top of me. They snatched my bread. They hit me again. I can't stand any more. Son, a drop of water. I knew that he must not drink. But he pleaded with more for a long, and that's what I gave in. Water was the worst poison he could have. But what else could I do for him? Water without water, it could all be over soon anyways. You at least have some mercy on me. Have mercy on him. I, his only son. A week went by like this. This is your father, isn't it? Asked the head of the block. Yes, he's very ill. The doctor won't do anything for him. The doctor can't do anything for him now, and neither can you. He put his great hairy hand on my shoulder and added, listen to me, boy. Don't forget that you're in a concentration camp. Here, every man for himself has to fight for himself and not think of anyone else, even of his father. Here, there are no fathers, no brothers, no friends. Everyone lives and dies for himself alone. I'll give you a sound piece of advice. Don't give your ration of bread or soup to your old father. There's nothing you can do for him, and you're killing yourself. Instead, you ought to be having his ration. I insisted him without interrupting. He was right. I thought in the most secret region in my heart, but I dare not to admit. It's too late to save your old father. I said to myself, you ought to be having 2 rations of bread, 2 rations of soup. Only a fraction of a second, but I felt guilty. I ran to find a little soup to give my father, but he did not want it. All he wanted was water. Don't drink water, have some soup. I'm burning. Why are you being so unkind to me, my son? Some water. I brought him some water, then I felt the block for a roll call. But I turned around and came back again. I lay down on the top bunk. Invalid were all allowed to stay in the block. So I would be an invalid myself. I would not leave my father. There was a silence all around now, broken only my groans. In front of the block, the SS were giving orders. An officer passed by the beds. My father's begging, my son, some water. I'm burning my stomach. Quiet over there, yelled the officer. Eliezer went on my father some water. The officer came up to him and shouted at him to be quiet. But my father did not hear him. He was only calling me. My father dealt with him to very blow to the head with his tuchman. I did not move. I was afraid. My body was afraid, also receiving a blow. Then my father made a rattling noise, and it was my name, Eliezer. I could see that he was still breathing. Spasmodically, I did not move. When I got down after the roll call, I could see his lips trembling and the murmur something beneath over him. I stayed gazing in front of him for an hour, engraving into myself the picture of the blood-stained face, his shattered skull. Then I had to go to bed. I climbed into my bunk above my father, who was still alive. It was January 28, 1945. I woke on January 29th at dawn. My father's place laid another invalid. They must have taken him away before dawn and carried him to the crematorium. He may still have been breathing. There were no prayers at his grave, no candles were lit in his memory. His last words were my name, a summons to which I did not respond. I did not weep, and it pained me that I could not weep. But I had no more tears, and in the depths of my being, in the recess of my weakness, conscious could I have searched it, I might perhaps have found something like free at last.